was afternoon. Right. So I'm coming back to Zoom after some time, and there are certain protocols that you have to follow. So I'll be uploading all of my recorded lectures on Google Drive, right? So, and then from Google Drive, we upload all of our lectures on the YouTube channel, right? That is by the name of Mega Lecture, right? In case there is delay, because sometimes obviously I upload on the Google Drive and then there's another team member who uploads it on the YouTube. So if there is delay on for the lectures to be uploaded on the YouTube, don't worry, I will provide the link for the Google Drive. Okay? Because I know your exams are coming up and you have to revise, right? So in every case, don't worry, you will get the recorded lectures. That's the simple thing that I wanted to say, right? Okay, now circle flow of income money is a graph that shows how money circulates in an economy, right? Easy, simple. Okay. Now, I was saying that there are different groups in an economy. So there are, the first group would be obviously consumers, right? So if you think about yourself, people like me and a lot of other people in the economy, we are obviously consumers. We buy goods, we spend money, right, on different goods and services because we have some human needs that we have to satisfy: food, water, shelter, blah, 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 right? So this is known as consumers, right? Consumers, right? Then you have another group, right? We call them household. In this particular example, circular flow of income, we call them household, right? So household basically is you and me who are living in homes, who are consumers, and so on and so forth. We'll see in a bit, right? You can also call them consumers, but I'm not writing this down because the language of this diagram doesn't call it consumers. It calls them household, right? Okay. Now, another sector in any economy is the firms, right? So think about Mega Lecture as a firm. Mega Lecture is a firm. There are a lot of other firms that you go to and buy goods for. Simple example would be KFC, McDonald's, all the fast food that you consume, and so many other firms that you buy. Let's say the cell phones that you buy, the laptops, the companies that produce laptops, and a lot of other things, right? The firms. Acha, ab ye baat aapne bahut gaur se dekhi. Students, have a look at this, right? Now, what happens that your factors of production flow from your households to your firms. आप लोग मेरी बात समझे? जो आपके FOPs हैं, let's not write down the full form. Let's just write down the acronym. Factors of production. So factors of production are flowing from the household to the firms, right? And what are the firms doing? Firms क्या करती हैं? जब firms के पास factors of production आते हैं, the firms produce the goods and services, right? क्योंकि देखें, factors of production तो घर like household से आ रहे हैं ना, because I'm a human being, I'm a household in Pakistan, but I'm providing my labor services to Mega Lecture, right? So I provide my factor of production to the firms, and firms use those factors of production and produce the goods and services like online teaching and so on and so forth for the households. Yes or no? Are you getting me? So this is the internal circle. This is the internal circle where households are providing firms the factors of production and firms are providing households the goods and services. Then there's an outer circle that obviously nothing is free. Nothing is free, right? Now, firms pay household what? Firms pay household what? If households are providing factors of production, then what will the firms provide to the households? Are you getting me? Think about this. Are the factors of production for free? Are the factors of production for free? The answer to that is money. Exactly. Perfect, right? So they are providing compensation to the factors of production, right? Exactly. Basically, the money or the compensation, which includes, we know, what is the compensation of factors of production? Right? So land gets rent, labor gets wages, capital gets interest, and enterprise gets what? Profit, right? So there are 4 factors of production, and these 4 factors of production are compensated like this. Am I right with this? Yes or no? Okay. Now, factors of production को उनकी compensation मिलती है, compensation of factors of production. And what about the households? Obviously, the goods that households buy from the firms are also not free. So this is the expenditure that households are making on goods and services. Are you getting me? Expenditure on goods and services. Is everyone clear on this, right? So we are talking about circular flow of income. We're talking about circular flow of income. So households provide factors of production to the firms. So the arrow is this way, right? Then firms use these factors of production to produce the goods and services for the household. So the arrow goes this way. Then obviously firms pay household the compensation for the factor of production. So the arrow goes this way, and households buy the products from the firms by paying the expenditure. So expenditure on goods and services. So the arrow goes this way. Is everyone clear on this? Is everything clear? Any confusion so far? Anything that's not clear? Right? So I'm just bolding the arrows so that you can more clearly see what way are the things flowing. Is everyone clear on this? यहाँ तक सबको बात समझ में आ गई? ठीक है. Now this would be the circular flow of income. This will be the circular flow of income for an economy that doesn't trade. Right, very good. This is the circular flow of income. So what we're talking about looking at circular flow of income. Right, and we just discussed that circular flow of income is a model, is a graph that shows how money or income circulates in an economy, right? So let's very quickly look at this and then move forward from here, right? So households, so the two sectors that I've listed on the screen that you can see right now, let me choose a different color, are the households and the firms. Who are households? Like the people like you and me, right? So what do? We provide the factors of production. What are the factors of production? Land, labor, capital, and enterprise. You know this, right? So land, labor, capital, and enterprise, these are the factors of production that households provide to firms. Using these resources, firms produce the goods and services that we consume all the time, right? So even online teaching is a service, right? We buy goods, services, laptop, phones, cars, shoes, whatever, clothes, right? So firms use these resources to produce goods and services for the households. So this is the internal circle. Internal circle is showing the movement of real goods and services, right? Movement of real goods and services. And the outer circle with the green arrows, the outer circle, the green lines. What are the green lines showing? Green lines are showing how the money will flow. First, households pay, first firms pay the household the compensation for the factor of production. I just told you that labor receive wages, land receive rent, capital receive interest, and enterprise receives profit. Yes or no? Right, this is the money. Yeah, exactly. This is the money flow. Excellent, right? Or households also buy the goods from the firms, right? So households pay the firms, household pay the firms, and that is known as EXP, meaning expenditure on goods and services. Is everyone clear on this? So the green arrows are showing you the flow of money, right? These green arrows, and this internal one, this purple one is showing you how the real products are moving, right? So it was this way, right? So let me increase, and this was also this way. Right? Easy, simple. Is everyone clear on this? Can we move on? Okay. But this is not all. There are two other sectors in an economy. Can you guess what are the other two sectors in an economy? Right now, I've shown only two sectors in an economy, which is household and firms. But if you think about it, there are two other prominent sectors in an economy, right? How can we forget that in any country, there would be a government that would be operating? Because government also produce some goods and services, right? Yes or no? There's government, and then there is another important sector in any economy, that is international trade. So think about this. Within Pakistan is one thing. Within Pakistan, we have firms and we have households. But Pakistan or any other country for that matter, they also trade with other countries in the world. Yes or no? So these two are two other sectors that we will show on the graph, on this diagram. Is everyone clear on this? So you would have government and you would have international trade. Are we good on this, students? Is everything adding up? Okay. Now think about this. What is the main role of the government? Does the government take away the money, or does government provide the money? Think about this. So we are talking about circular flow of income. So obviously we're looking at things from money perspective, right? So my question to you is, if you think of the government in any country, so what's the government's main role? Is the government providing money to the, these sectors, or is the government taking the money? It's doing both. Excellent, right? So government is doing both. Think about this. Now this brings us to another topic that you have to understand, that there will be some injections, because this is circular flow of money. We are looking at how money flows in an economy. So we'll talk about there will be some injections and withdrawals from the economy. There will be some things that will get the money in the system, and there will be few things that will be taking the money out of the system. Injection would be few things that are getting the money into the system, and withdrawal would be few things that is taking the money out of the system. Providing money to poor and taking from the rich. Exactly. Taxation you're talking about. Very good, right? Now, what Arbab just said is basically taxation, right? Withdrawal kya hota hai? You take money from the rich and then you spend it on different things, including giving it to the poor. Very good. Excellent, right? So taxation is one withdrawal. Taxation is one withdrawal. Very good. What else takes the money out of a system? Out of the system, meaning one country, one economy would be a system. So Pakistan is a system. India is a system, right? So similarly, other countries and other economies are a system. Saving is a withdrawal. Excellent, right? So either you can tax people, or you can save your money, which is taking the money out of the system because you're not spending it. That's not becoming, that's not being used by anyone. Or you can import. Excellent, Rishma. Or you can import. So these are the three possible withdrawals, or we also call them leakages, by the way. Leakage is also a word that you can easily understand. So it's called, either you use the word when the money is going out of the system, you call it either a withdrawal or a leakage from the system. Yes or no? Now, as far as the injections are concerned, what are the three injections? What are the three injections? What will get you more money into the system, right? Export, investment, and government spending. That sums it all up, right? So when you export, think about this. What is an export? Export is anything that is produced in your country, but that is consumed by foreigners, right? Consumers of other countries, right? So Pakistan produces, let's say, footballs. If they export it to other country, then that would count as our exports. And similarly, all other countries in the world export something. So exports. Then what other injection? As Elishba said, there will be government spending. So the taxes that government collects from people, obviously that will be spent somewhere, right? So you don't just, the government not only gathers the money, obviously it collects and then spend on different things. So government spending, exports, government spending, and investment. So when the private sector invests in new technology, they build new, what is that called? Factories and stuff like that, right? So these will be additional things that we are about to show on this diagram, right? So first of all, we talked about just the two sectors, as you can see on the screen right now, households and firms, right? By the way, do you see where my cursor is? Do you guys see? Because of Noon Academy could not see. So आप लोगों को ये नजर आता है जब मैं move करता हूँ mouse, right? So initially on the diagram we saw that there are two sectors, household and firms, right? We looked at this, and then, okay, great, that makes my life a lot easier. Okay, now then we said that there will be two other sectors in the economy, government and international trade, right? So let's just write this down: IT, international trade, right? And some money will be coming into the system and some money will be going out of the system. So three things that will get money in the system are exports, government spending, and investment, and three things that will get the money out of the system: taxation, saving, and imports, right? Okay, now all you have to do is to show with an arrow. Let's choose a purple color, or let's see if we can choose a different color, blue color, for the leakages, right? So what are the three leakages? So we'll draw an arrow outside of this, right? So it would be taxation. So there's no particular style for this. So you can just show either the leakages from the household or the firms. It doesn't make any difference, right? So household की तरफ हम leakages show कर रहे हैं, taxation, money is going out. Then you write saving on one arrow, and then you write the third thing, which is imports, on the third arrow, right? Sorry about that. Imports on the third arrow. Is everyone clear on this, right? Then similarly, you show injections on the other side, which I'm about to do right now. You show your injections on the other side. So from the firms, we can do that. So it would be government spending, investment, and exports. So let's choose a different color for this. Which one should we choose? Let's say we go with green. Acha ji, ye dekhen, money coming into the system, that would include exports. Another thing that will get you money in the system is investment, and another thing that will get you money in the system is your government spending, right? Is everyone clear on this? So this is how you need to make this. So this is what your entire circular flow of income looks like. So what is circular flow of income? Circular flow of income is a graph, is graphical depiction basically of how money circulates in an economy. And there are four sectors in an economy, as you would know by now. So household, that's one. Then you have firms. Household are the people, citizens living in a country. Firms are all the companies that operate in that country to produce goods and services. And then you have two other sectors, government and international trade, right? So anything that takes the money out of the system, imports, saving, and taxation, would be withdrawals or leakages. Anything that gets you money in the system, exports, investment, and government spending, will be, this is injection, exports, investment, government spending, and leakages or withdrawals are anything that is taking money out of the system. Is everyone clear on this? Okay, now if this is clear, this was a fairly simple and easy thing, but this was important for us to understand what we're about to do next. So what we're about to do next is that we will talk about Keynesian cross. Now, what is Keynesian cross? Let me give you a little bit of an idea. So Keynesian cross is a model. Keynesian cross is a model that predicts how much will be the GDP of a country. What is Keynesian cross? Keynesian cross is a model that predicts how much will be the GDP of a country. So let me write this down and then we can. Okay. Now the next thing after the circular flow of income that we're about to discuss right now is Keynesian cross. Now what is Keynesian cross? Think about this. In AS, let me tell you a little bit about what Keynesian cross is so that you have everything in, so you better understand and then move forward. Okay. Now in AS, हमने AS में क्या पढ़ा था? In AS we talked about that GDP of a country is determined by its aggregate demand and aggregate supply. So your general price level, general price level used to be on the y-axis, general price level, and your real GDP used to be on the x-axis. Is this clear? Right? So I'm talking about what we learned in the AS. So this is not Keynesian cross. I'm just telling you what we learned. I'm just giving you a quick recap of what we have already studied in the AS, right? So downward sloping used to be your aggregate demand, and upward sloping used to be your aggregate supply. Wherever aggregate demand and aggregate supply of an economy used to be equal, that used to be its equilibrium point. As simple as that. Any confusion so far? Anything that's not clear, right? So this used to be your general price level. This used to be your equilibrium, and this used to be your real GDP. Easy? Are we good on this? In A2, when we talk about Keynesian cross, what we'll look at is basically a model. So we will be doing something similar. We will be predicting how much will be the real GDP, how much will be the GDP of a country, not real, just nominal GDP, but we'll be using a different approach, right? So Keynesian cross, similar to this macroeconomic equilibrium, this graph used to be is called macroeconomic equilibrium. The purpose of the two things is the same, but we will predict GDP using Keynesian cross, and we'll be using a different approach over here. So Keynesian cross, a model that predicts GDP of a country, right? So this is basically its simple definition. Model that predicts the GDP of a country. So basically its purpose is the same as the macroeconomic equilibrium, but obviously the approach is very different, as you will see in a bit, right? Now, are things adding up? Are the things adding up, right? So circular flow of income was necessary to understand what we're about to do next, which is Keynesian cross. And it's what? It's a model that predicts GDP of a country. So anything more than that will confuse you right now. So once we deep dive into this, then you will better understand what the actual objective of Keynesian cross is. So what do you have to know about the Keynesian cross, right? So what we will look at is basically, first of all, we know what is aggregate demand made up of. Have a look at this. Aggregate demand is made up of what, students? It's made up of consumption. It's made up of investment. It's made up of government spending and the 5 components of aggregate demand. This is something that we already know. I'm just listing this down. And exports minus imports, right? Is it making sense? Exactly, right? Now, why is that important? We'll see in a bit, right? So aggregate demand of a country is made up of the total consumption. What is total consumption? All the money that consumers are spending on buying different goods and services. So think about this. So Pakistan's consumption includes all the people or all the spending that people in Pakistan are making on buying food, on buying, paying the electricity bills, on paying for the education fee, or paying for the other goods and services, clothes, shoes, rent, electricity, right? All that stuff. All of that comes into consumption. Now, what is investment? So if you're looking at Pakistan's investment, so that will include all the spending made by the firms in the capital goods, right? So when they expand their production facilities, when they buy new technology and stuff like exactly the amount spent on capital goods, right? So that is the entire investment of Pakistan. So we already know this through AS, but we are obviously revising and recalling this. What is government spending? So government spending is the amount that government spends on different projects and things like an infrastructure project, like constructing a new motorway, or let's say spending money on public schools, public health cares, giving subsidies to different people and all that stuff. So all the money that the government spends during a certain time period would be government spending, including subsidies. Exactly. Very good. Then you have exports. As I said, export is the value of the goods that are produced in Pakistan but are consumed, or we are talking about Pakistan, that's why I'm giving you an example, and are exported to other countries. What are imports? Imports are all the products that are produced in foreign countries, in some other country, not your country, but those are consumed by your locals, your citizens, your people, right? Is it simple? Okay, now the first thing that we are about to look at is known as, now we'll talk about consumption function. Now this is something new for you, consumption function, right? अब हम इन सब का function देखेंगे. Now what is consumption function? This might sound, this is something very complicated, difficult. No, let me give you an idea. So consumption functions, we'll talk about, have a look at this. So we'll talk about what is consumption function, we'll talk about investment function, we'll talk about government spending function, we'll talk about export function, and we'll talk about import function. So basically, what is this new terminology about? Think about this. So consumption function is mathematical depiction of the factors on which consumers' consumption depend. Okay, let's repeat this slowly, right? Consumption function is a mathematical, because there would be some values and equations, right? Very simple ones, no need to worry about it, but it is a mathematical model. A mathematical equation model, you can say, equation, I think would do more justice to this. A mathematical equation that identifies factors on which consumers spending depend. How many of you are absolutely clear on what we are doing right now? Right? So far, is everyone absolutely clear on what we are doing over here? Right? So we are doing Keynesian cross. It's a model that predicts how the GDP of a country is determined, or what the value, or that predicts the GDP of a country, right? What is it that you did not understand? About this point where you did not understand? Which part you did not understand? Consumption function. Take it, no problem. Let me explain, right? So students, we're doing Keynesian cross. Keynesian cross is a model that predicts GDP of a country, first thing. Now, when we complete the concept of Keynesian cross, you will know how the GDP of a country, what value, how you can predict the value of the GDP of any country, right? But before that, we have to do small, simple topics. We have to understand different smaller topics and concepts, right? Now, aggregate demand is basically what? Aggregate demand is the total spending on economy's goods and services. What is aggregate demand? Total spending on economy's goods and services, right? Now, one thing we need to know that GDP is what? GDP is the total production of goods and services. So to determine the GDP of a country, we need to know what its aggregate demand is. Guys, are you getting me? Total spending on an economy's goods and services. So to know a country's GDP, one important component to understand within that economy's goods and services, right, is to understand that how much, or to predict how much is its aggregate demand. Are you getting me? Right? So you can't predict the total spending or total GDP, total value of goods and services produced in a country without estimating the country's aggregate demand. So to do that, what we are doing, we are breaking the 5 components of aggregate demand: consumption, investment, government spending, exports, and imports, into different, we consider them as different components. And we are about to look at what is each component made up of? What is each component made up of? Don't worry if we proceed and there's still something that's not clear, I'll explain you again. But what we're doing right now, consumption function is an equation. Let's even remove the word mathematical. Equation is obviously mathematical. A mathematical equation that identifies factors on which consumers' spending depend, right? So I'm just about to break it down for you, that what factors we consider, or what factors are important in determining our consumption, right? ठीक है, इसी तरह फिर हम देखेंगे कि जो एक कंट्री की इन्वेस्टमेंट होती है वो किन फैक्टर्स पे डिपेंड कर रही होती है। आप मेरी बात समझ रहे हैं? देखिए, if I quickly ask you that what are the factors that affect the investment of a country, you guys already know. Can you tell me which are the factors, right? So the factors on which our economies investment depend, on any economy's investment depend, includes what? The interest rates, right? Exactly, interest rates. The profit levels. If profit levels are increasing, obviously you will invest more. You'll invest more, and so on and so forth. आप लोगों को बात समझ में आ रही है? ठीक है जी. अच्छा, इसी तरह गवर्नमेंट स्पेंडिंग किन फैक्टर्स पे डिपेंड कर रही होती है? सो गवर्नमेंट स्पेंडिंग वुड बी मोस्ट प्रोबेबली डिपेंडेंट ऑन हाउ मच taxes the government has collected. That will depend on, what are the government objectives, what, not really inflation, but these things, right? Exports किन किन चीजों पे डिपेंड कर रहा होता है? Students, exports of an economy are dependent on things like how good is the quality for the products that are produced in your country, what is the exchange rate. जब एक्सचेंज रेट वीक होता है, एएस में हमने क्या पढ़ा, जब आपका एक्सचेंज रेट वीक होता है, भी हम पढ़ेंगे अगर आप एएस साथ ले लें, बट अदरवाइज इफ यू हैव कंप्लीटेड एएस यू वुड नो दैट व्हेन योर एक्सचेंज रेट्स आर वीकर, दैट increases the demand for your exports, right? Because your products are relatively cheaper compared to other products, your competitors' products, and similarly so on and so forth. So, अब हम कह रहे हैं बात कि we are just breaking it down. We are breaking each component of aggregate demand down, and we are making a function out of it. So it will be just like looking in more detail that what is consumption of a country made up of, what is the investment of a country made up of, what is the government spending of a country made up of, similarly exports and imports. That's what we're doing. To basically make it an equation sort of a thing, to make it a more mathematical. देखिए, AS में अभी मैंने आपको बताया, वो तो सारा क्या था? That was just a theory. आपको नहीं पता था कि एग्रीगेट डिमांड, आपको सिर्फ ये पता था कि जी एग्रीगेट डिमांड अगर इंक्रीज होगी तो आपका एग्रीगेट डिमांड का कर्व राइट पे शिफ्ट कर देगा, जो भी हमने एएस में पढ़ा भी है, राइट? आई एम श्योर यू वुड हैव टेकन दैट क्लास, राइट? एग्रीगेट डिमांड आपकी राइट पे शिफ्ट कर देगी, ठीक है? हमें ये नहीं पता था कि एग्रीगेट डिमांड आप बेसिकली इक्वेशन कैसे शिफ्ट कर रही है, व्हाट आर द थिंग्स, व्हाट आर द वैल्यूज. तो वो सारा कुछ कैलकुलेट करने के लिए वी आर लुकिंग एट द कंजम्पशन फंक्शन एंड सिमिलरली अदर फंक्शंस, एंड देन विल गेट अ बेटर आइडिया. ठीक है जी. अच्छा, अब कंजम्पशन फंक्शन में हम थोड़ा सा प्रोसीड करेंगे, यू विल गेट एवरीथिंग विल बी क्रिस्टल क्लियर. ओके, नाउ कंजम्पशन फंक्शन. सो व्हाट डू यू थिंक, व्हाट आर द फैक्टर्स दैट योर कंजम्पशन डिपेंड ऑन? What are the factors? Simply, I'm asking you one very simple question that you would already know, but that question is, what factors your consumption depend on? So when you spend your money on buying, and consumption includes everything, all the money that you spend on buying different goods and services, what factors your consumption depend on? This is a very simple question that I've asked you. Depend on. What factors your consumption depends on, right? Price of the good, income. That's correct. That's absolutely correct, right? Acha. Now students, have a look at this. अब ये बहुत important है. Now this is something that's very important. Now let's first list down all the things and then move on. Exactly. Let's list it down so that you get a better idea. Yes, interest rates. अगर interest rates आपके ज़्यादा होते हैं तो आप borrowing कम करते हैं, तो आप spending भी कम करते हैं, and so on and so forth. We know this, right? Then prices of the goods is a very important factor, right? So if prices get more expensive, you will consume less, right? Because you have to save it for the future. आजकल हम AS में ये कर रहे हैं, right? यही पढ़ रहे हैं, right? Then another thing is obviously income is perhaps the most important thing, because higher the income, this means that you can afford to spend more. Low the incomes, you can't afford to spend much, right? So इधर यहाँ पे मैं income लिख रहा हूँ, right? So income is another factor. What other factors can you think of, right? Then you have consumers have their own personal preferences, right? So sometimes they're in a saving mode, elasticity of the product, exactly. Inflation, उसको हमने इसी के अंदर काउंट कर लिया ना, price of goods. We are not looking at price of one good, we are generally looking at the prices for the goods. Right, exactly, that's correct. So price of goods में, क्योंकि मैंने price of good नहीं लिखा, it's price of the goods. और क्योंकि we are talking already about macroeconomics, so we will not be looking at the individual items prices. We'll be looking at overall, the prices overall. ठीक है जी? This is making sense? Students, this is making sense. ठीक है जी? Okay, and then consumers' own preferences, right? So if they have major expenditure coming up, so they save more. Preferences, right? Sometimes people generally have preferences. Some people are more inclined towards saving, some people are more inclined towards spending. You must have seen around yourself preferences of consumers and so on. So there is a long list, and we are not saying that we have covered all the factors, right? Is this simple? Is this clear? Right? So ये सारे factors हैं, and ये सारे भी और कुछ और भी factors होंगे जो आपकी consumption को affect करते हैं. यहाँ तक बात समझ में आ गई, right? Okay, now we will divide all of these factors into categories. Now this is very important, so you have to pay close attention. We'll divide all of these factors into major categories. What are those? So we will call it either your consumption would be autonomous, right? So here's the word, autonomous consumption, or you will call it induced consumption. Now listen to this very carefully. Autonomous consumption and induced consumption. So consumption, component of your consumption that is based on your income levels. Listen to this carefully. Component of consumption that is based on your income levels is induced consumption. I repeat, right? जो हमारी consumption, देखें अभी I'm consuming a certain amount of money every month, so on, right? अगर मेरी जो है वो इंक्रीज करती है, अगर मेरी इनकम इंक्रीज करती है, तो will I start spending more? Will I start spending more if my incomes increase? What do you guys think? Yes or no? If my incomes increase, will I start spending more? Most probably yes, right? Because now I have ability to spend more. Arbab, are you following this, right? So now I have ability to spend more. So this component of consumption, which is based on the income of an individual, that is known as induced consumption. And another thing that we need to understand, but then the thing is that I have to consume even if my income is zero. I know this is a lot of things to remember, right? But let's look at this one more time. Arbab, do let me know where you feel lost. Jahan pe you think that you are, losing track and it's becoming difficult, do let me know. I'll give you a recap. Yes, let's do a recap. देखें, यहाँ तक तो बात सिंपल है ना. हमने बात की कि what factors your consumption depend on. Right? As simple as that, right? We know that there is interest rate. उसका link आपको already पता है. Interest rate ज़्यादा होंगे तो borrowing कम होगी, आप consume कम करेंगे. When goods become more expensive, you consume less, right? You save more. ठीक है जी. Income ज़्यादा होगी तो you spend more. Income कम होगी तो you spend less. And then I said that there are preferences of consumers. Some consumers are generally inclined towards spending more. Some consumers are generally inclined towards spending less, right? So these are all the factors. And then obviously there can be factor E, F, and the list goes on. This is not the complete list. That's what I'm saying. ठीक है जी? अच्छा, अब इसमें हम क्या कर रहे हैं? इन सब factors को अरबाब we are dividing in two categories. So we are dividing, right, separating all these factors that affect your consumption into categories. So factors that are based on, so any component of consumption that is affected by your income levels, any component of your consumption that is affected by your income levels would be known as induced consumption. That would be known as induced consumption. ठीक है जी. और ये जो बाकी सारे फैक्टर्स हैं इनको हमने ग्रुप अप कर दिया. ये देखिए इसको मैं कैसे ये ब्लॉक बना देता हूं. राइट, ये जो बाकी फैक्टर्स है ना, ये जो सारे, ठीक है, इन सबको हमने किस कैटेगरी में डाल दिया? इन सबको हमने किस कैटेगरी में डाल दिया अरबाब? सो वी हैव पुट देम इन द कैटेगरी ऑफ ऑटोनोमस कंजम्पशन. जैसे मैं आपको एग्जांपल देता हूं, अगर इंटरेस्ट रेट इंक्रीज होंगे तो आपकी कंजम्पशन कम होगी. इंटरेस्ट रेट ज्यादा होंगे तो आप बोरोइंग नहीं करेंगे ना, आपकी कंजम्पशन कम होगी. यहां तक बात समझ में आ रही है? इसको आप induced consumption कहेंगे या autonomous consumption कहेंगे? What would you call that? What would you call that? You'll call that autonomous, right? Exactly. You're getting it right. क्यों? क्योंकि that is not based on, that factor wasn't obviously based on incomes, that was based on something else. All the things, all the factors. So you can think about this. Let me write down the definition. In fact, let me do that. Right. So let's get rid of the extra stuff here. So autonomous consumption is defined as consumption that is affected by factors apart from income levels. I repeat, autonomous consumption is consumption, component of consumption, like उसको हम divide कर रहे हैं. अगर total consumption मेरी 50,000 है एक महीने की, so उसके अंदर से let's say 30,000 is my autonomous consumption. So that would be based on interest rate कितने हैं, मैं save करना चाह रहा हूँ या मैं spend करना चाह रहा हूँ, and things like that, right? So autonomous consumption is consumption that is affected by factors apart from income of a consumer. Autonomous consumption that is affected that is affected by any factor above. Is this making sense? That is affected by any factor. अब ये शुरू में क्योंकि शुरू में तो हमें जो टर्मिनोलॉजी है उसके साथ थोड़ा सा यूज्ड टू होना है, बाद में आप ज्यादा कंफर्टेबल हो जाएंगे. Is consumption that is affected by any factor apart from income, right? So autonomous consumption is any consumption that is affected by factors apart from income. Induced consumption only consists of, yes, induced consumption only consists of income. Exactly. So जो आपकी consumption depend कर रही है ना on income, that would be induced consumption. So हमने क्या किया, हमने सारे जो factors अभी list down किए थे ना जो आपकी consumption को affect करते हैं उसको हमने दो categories में divide कर दिया to make the model easy. मतलब कि अभी आपको ये बहुत confusing लग रहा हो and this might even sound कि this is so weird. Why are we doing it? There are so many different factors. Why are we not treating them differently? But the simple answer to that is it's always about the model. So you have to make the model more, you have to simplify the model because otherwise it will get too complicated. अगर हम सारे factors को count for करें आगे चल के, if you study economics, you will understand that a model has to be simple and so on, right? So जितने भी factors consumption को affect करते हैं apart from income, that would be autonomous consumption. ठीक है जी, अभी हम डिस्कस भी करेंगे, राइट? डोंट वरी. और जितने जो कंजम्पशन को अफेक्ट करती है इनकम, दैट वुड बी इंड्यूस्ड कंजम्पशन. So let me write down for you before the class link expires. Induced consumption is consumption that is affected by income of an individual. Consumption that is affected by income, right? So जो बाकी से आगे की कहानी है वो हम कल करेंगे. अभी तक कोई चीज ना समझ आए हो, I hope. That is affected by income of a consumer, right? So consumption that is affected by income of a consumer is called induced consumption. Income that is affected by other factors like interest rate, inflation, blah blah blah, and all these things, that would be known as autonomous consumption. अच्छा, अब ये टर्मिनोलॉजी आपको मुश्किल लगी होगी. कल जब हम इसकी इक्वेशन शुरू करेंगे ना, at the start of the class when we look at the consumption function equation, तो फिर you will see कि यार ये तो this is very simple and very intuitive, right? So but do remember the terminology.